Dean
But I
Drive.
think the lobby would remain the same, but I don't know what they're doing now.
I
so.
would love to hear.
So we have two
what
conceptual.
you
time
say.
in the day.
I was
We'll work
bummed.
through those.
Anybody that can give you
Sure.
advice, help, whatever. Those are pretty much
And
jumping
this,
Yeah, pretty much.
this Beechwood,
I would cut it. My God. Barely.
Gonna be up all night.
whose notes are these? Is that the staff report?
Nope, this is, for the presentation for Pendleton, staff report.
To follow along.
Little Rock.
Awful. It was boring.
Because I
So
don't
we
have
went
the
out-
link, so.
Tuesday night.
So Wes's letter requested
And,
that it just be tabled
So
to.
we're driving around
Yes,
downtown Little Rock.
that's the Naughty
Not a
Marina.
car
Yes.
on the road.
And
gotta be like
until
dinner time.
necessary
Do
review.
you need the
Where
letter
is
from us? Or you have it?
Yeah,
All
I have
parking
the
spots
letter.
are full.
So
There's
this,
no cars.
this is our
That
staff
makes
review.
sense.
Yeah, I don't know
Just-
what kind of
We
review's
need-
been
Need to make sure
done
we
so
have the
far, but it
findings
doesn't
Worried about
make
that
sense.
sewer line.
Absolutely,
Irish-
Okay.
Irish.
said,
Ooh, fun.
concern that.
Okay,
and this is Bay Street.
got it.
This is just the new thing, the added
Is there?
application.
I can't
All right.
remember it.
And I'm just gonna have a few words to say about,
Poor decisions.
DD,
about the.
DD?
uh,
It's a different one.
That's Mexican food, actually.
I always am.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're selling Mexican food,
So
Spanish
we'll go
food.
by this.
At an Irish pub?
Yeah.
No, at Poor
Are you-
Decisions.
Let me know when you're ready, I'm ready.
One across from Smoke and Barley.
We're already recording,
Used to-
Oh, that's open
so
now?
this
It's a
was
craft
all
beer
just a
place.
rehearsal,
Really?
folks.
It's called Poor Decisions?
Poor, P-O-U-R.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. It's 6:35. I'm going to call this meeting of the Planning Board to order. May we have the call of the roll, please?
Brett Belder,
Here.
Amy Ludwig,
Here.
Rob Morrow,
Here.
Rich McNeil,
Here.
Charlie St. Clair,
Here.
Scott McWilliam,
Here.
Mike Delavecchia,
Here.
Stacy Susie,
Here.
and Peter Burnett.
Here. Present and accounted for, ma'am. Okay, and staff tonight is Kalina Graham. Have you all had a chance to review the minutes from the January 10th meeting? Are there any additions, corrections, or any suggestions for changes? Sensing none, the chair will declare those minutes accepted. We have no extensions or continued, yes, we do have a continued public hearing. 8.1 on your agenda is PL 2022-0070 SP and 0071 CUP Performance Zoning. It's 35, 53, and 71 Hike, Winnisquam Avenue. Proposal to reconstruct retaining wall, boat ramp, boathouse, and one residential building within the 4 parcels. That is my understanding at the request of the applicant, and the city is going to be continued to the 7th of March. And that pertains, that's what the planning board letter is on. That's the reference in there to sewer. There are a number of major sanitary sewer lines that go through that property.
He's asked for April, just so you know.
We're doing it till March.
He said, yeah, well, that's, I think it's, the one that stuck out to me was that 60% of the sewage that flows to the Winnipesaukee River Basin Program's treatment plant in Franklin goes through that property. Yes, Charlie?
So if the Director of Public Works is asking to just go to April, why are we doing it to March? If he's gonna come back and say, "Can you push it to April?" I
Good
mean,
question. Does anyone know? No? The applicant probably would rather have it done sooner rather than later. I'm sure that the Director of Public Works will be diligently following the matter and be sure to let us know if he doesn't think we should proceed on March. But for the time being, the matter is continued to March 7th. Moving right along,
So we need motion.
Motion.
oh, yes, we need a motion to table the matter until March 7th.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Scott, a second by Rob. Any discussion?
Okay.
All those in favor, say aye, or raise your hand, or do something. Opposed? It looks like it was unanimous. Okay. On the record, we reflect that Counselor Cheney has joined us. Welcome.
Thank you. I
You didn't miss-
apologize profusely.
You didn't, don't worry, that save your profuseness for some other issue. There was nothing much you missed. All right, 9.1, 61 Pendleton Road, Beechwood Developments, a proposal to amend the cluster subdivision from 12 to 13 units. This application was found to be in order and accepted on the January 10th. And is the applicant here and ready to proceed? He's hiding behind the,
Hiding behind the subdivision.
good evening, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Peter Howard, Dubois and King, representing John Remington. Just for the record, John is watching, and he is also available on my phone if he has any questions or if anything he can address to you. So, answer any questions. Just as a bit of history, Beechwood is an existing cluster subdivision. It's been approved for over 20 years. Was approved originally with 15 lots. John Remington did that. He owns one of the houses down on the water and has sort of carefully developed this over the years to have some other homes here in the woods and along the water, and has some serious interest in some of the lots now, and so he's making some final amendments, if you will, to the subdivision to make this more palatable to the buyers, but keeping it well within the regulations of the cluster subdivision that it was approved under. And so what we're here for tonight is really some minor changes. I know we were here in November, got the subdivision amendment, cluster subdivision approved at that point, but just a point of orientation, just to make sure everybody's aware of where it is, down in the Weirs. This is Endicott Street East here. This is Pendleton Road, City Road. This is Wentworth Cove Road, City Road, ends here at the beginning, or the entrance into the cluster subdivision. And there's another access point off Pendleton Road, another private road. These will all be private roads. They are now, they will be. We have provided fire truck accessible turnarounds at the end of both of these roads. The road will end here, the road will end here, all private. There is a little gravel road that kind of goes between, but that's always been there. That was the original road that John's house, that John had access from Pendleton Road down through a little gravel road down into his house. But anyway, that's the proposal now. As I mentioned, John has had some serious interest in buying some of the other lots. So we just reconfigured the lots slightly for a couple of reasons. One is, the last time we were here, this was all one lot.
Yep.
And what we've done, the person that is interested in buying this property, but he would like to buy it so that it's two lots, family matters, so he can keep things separate in the family. So I'd like to put this line on here, bring it back. We will be less than the 15 original lots. We're gonna bring it up to 13 now. There was 12. We'll make it so. Really wanna just put that line in there, make two lots, have it available for the potential buyer. The other thing we've done is reconfigured these lots so that there's frontage on this, more frontage on this road. I don't know if you recall, but there used to be a kind of a long driveway that went out into this area for the potential development for a home. Put the line down here. Now it is much more accessible for, the driveway will have to be shorter for emergency access, sewer access, electrical access. The former plan had a long underground electrical access out to this back lot, which it turned out to be very expensive. This way, we're gonna put the transformer will be in here, and the access will be much shorter for all of these lots. So really, the idea here to streamline the utility access and to break this lot into two for the potential buyer.
So it's, the road that comes in off Wentworth Cove, that's not a through road through the development, is it?
No, ends
So
here.
it ends where the hammerhead is there?
Yes, that's the turnaround.
Yep,
That's the turnaround. They've all been looked at by the fire department and approved.
okay. The only other question I have is, it says in our sheet, this was approved under, or submitted for performance zoning?
No.
No, that's an error? Am I looking at the right one?
No.
No, I'm not. Okay, never mind.
Good.
Thank you very much. Sorry, didn't mean to throw you a curve. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, Peter, the new lot, is it big enough to put a house on? It looks pretty small.
This lot, yeah, it is 34,000 square feet. Yeah,
Pretty big.
plenty of room for the setbacks. It would be in this area.
Any other questions for the applicant? Sure, Rob.
And you said both those were gonna be private roads on the one coming in from, Wentworth Cove, and
Yeah.
then the other one there, coming in,
From Pendleton, yes,
Pendleton.
private roads will remain that way, yes.
the street width for those, do you know what that's gonna be?
The pavement width?
Yeah.
This is gonna be like a driveway, 12-foot wide, 2-foot shoulders.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, sensing none, I'm gonna open the public hearing at 6:45. Are there any abutters here that would wish to be heard regarding this Pendleton Road Beechwood development? Any members of the public that wish to be heard on this? All right, well, sensing none, then I'll close the public hearing at 6:45 and 50 seconds. Is there a staff report for this one?
Yes, and you have it.
I think you might have given it to me.
I did. The only thing you
Here it
need
is, yes.
to really do is do the finding when you do this, as it's not listed on the staff report,
Okay.
when you do either approve or deny.
Well, the finding doesn't have to be anything more than
The reason why you're approving or denying.
the amendment that's requested is not gonna cause a significant change to the environment, and is in conformance with all regulations, right? Something like that?
Yep, exactly.
Please, do I have an opportunity to say something?
Yeah, oh, yeah, sure.
I would like to express my concern about the 12-foot driveway. If we were talking about to a house, I'd be fine, but to a number of houses, 12-foot seems on the scant side.
It's a one-laner for sure.
Yeah, and if you start running emergency equipment in, fire trucks, whatever, what if the pumper gets there first and they need the ladder, or vice versa? Somebody has to back out.
Not to mention snowbanks in the winter.
Exactly. So I'd like to express some significant concern about that.
If I may, I did also share that concern, but I believe in the cluster ordinance, you have to have a waiver to reduce your street size down to a certain width, and I don't know if they have.
Well, the cluster back in 2000 was different
Okay.
as well.
Well, I believe the applicant has represented that they've made no change to the width.
Yeah,
Of
it
the
has,
But
that,
it's just the parcel, the lot
yeah,
lines.
the
So-
roads have not changed since the 2000 approval.
So whether or not a waiver was granted at that time, I think is moot.
Okay.
Because it was approved. The appeal period's long run. But a good point.
Well, they're back asking for something different now than they did in 2000.
But not on the road,
But
only
they're
the
not
lot.
I
changing-
understand that.
Yeah.
But those things connected to the road are now changing. And I think that gives us an opportunity to say the road needs to be widened.
Well,
So it could have been brought up 4 years ago, too.
Because I did look it up earlier today, in the zoning ordinance. Because I think it was originally, when they changed it in 2000, in November, they had it as a driveway. But once it,
Maybe reduced by 18 feet
maybe, okay.
back in the day, the original one,
18 feet?
18 feet.
Right, so
Pavement
now we're
width
down to
maybe
12.
reduced to 18 feet.
So at 18 feet. the
Streets maybe no
bylaw.
longer than
I don't
1,000
think
square
so.
feet measured to the
More like
farthest
20.
point.
24.
And
well, it services 4 lots, right?
Yeah.
They basically are sharing a driveway.
Yeah, can I comment?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the thought in doing this, and it's been looked at by the fire department, and that's the way it's been all along. These would be, these driveways would come off quickly off this road, but the idea was that we minimize the impact. He's got this wooded lot in here, and that's why he like to keep it environmentally as small an impact as possible. So, it's driveway.
Can you show the driveways, just point to the driveways on there? You just pointed out the two.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is the buildable area in this lot.
Yeah.
So it would be in here. This is, start of a driveway here that goes out into this lot.
Okay.
And the condition, one of the conditions was that we not access these off from Pendleton.
So how
Road.
about further in? Where would?
But these, I don't know where they would be yet. It would depend upon, where the person really wanted to build.
I'm just thinking about fire equipment, because if one truck goes in and they're able to pull in off that road to get, onto a driveway on the property, then that gives room for the next truck, if there's, God forbid, if there's another truck needed, they're not gonna be blocked further from the residents there by a 12-foot road. I'm just wondering if,
That ain't the way it happens.
figures, I was hoping.
Did you say most recently it was 18 feet?
No, so
That
the
was
old, the
reduced
old
by 18
cluster ordinance is that you're allowed to reduce it by 18 feet.
By 18 or to 18?
18.
You said by
Did I say
18,
by, then by?
by 18 feet.
By 18 feet, I think you mean
Streets.
to 18 feet.
To 18, yes. Pavement width may be reduced to 18 feet. And you said it's how? State?
12 now?
Excuse me?
12.
How? 12.
Yeah. Well, originally there was
It
a,
looks wider than 12 on that plan,
that's the right of way.
yeah,
Originally, there was a road that went all the way through.
right.
But,
See the dotted
to
line.
try to minimize the impact of the development and put the turnaround here, fire department had looked at it. And so we cut it down,
How difficult?
tried to minimize it.
How difficult would it be on this project to go back to 18 feet?
18 feet?
That's 6 feet more than where you are now.
Well, of course, it's possible, but trying to, as I said, minimize the,
That's 3 feet on each side.
Yeah, I mean, we're not asking you to do a lot, but I'd like to see it wider. I really would.
Not like this, on each side.
I think the
Width of
councilman's
the
point is
pavement
well
or the width
taken.
of the road?
I'm sorry?
The width of the pavement
Yellow.
or the road itself?
I don't know what's the difference.
you want to make
But
a
they said
comment?
it was gonna be dirt.
Coterminous with the
I
pavement.
think it's pavement and
He's
2
talking
foot
about a
shoulder.
right-of-way, that
Outside.
could include unpaved areas.
So 3 feet, is like, on each side, it's not that much.
Well, because he said
Listen to
12
me.
feet
When you
with a
get trucks in
2-foot
there.
shoulder on each side, so that's
But they're
already
saying multiple
16
driveways
feet.
off from Just for one driveway. so-
Well, if the ordinance says maybe reduced to 18
Yes.
feet, then they would indeed need
Yep.
a waiver to go
All right.
less than 18,
They may
right?
have
How many feet do you need to be considered more of a two-lane road?
Well, something on the order of 24 feet.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Typical lane is 10 to 12 feet, so.
Yeah.
Except we're not really trying to consider this as a road,
No,
a shared
no,
driveway.
No.
You know, it's
I was
private,
concerned
it's,
here. I understand, just from a public safety standpoint, I'm uncomfortable with 12 feet wide, and as the chairman suggested, put in a few snowbanks and
yeah.
park some cars there, because the neighbors are having a party, and all of a sudden,
And this was approved with this, like this, in November, this past year. What we've coming in to change tonight really is the lot line and the configuration of the lots for better access for the other utilities, so.
Well, that doesn't deprive us of the jurisdiction to change
But I think,
that based on the new lot configurations.
I think there's a fine line, though, if we're talking about public safety on a private road. The fire department has signed off that the 12 feet with an additional 2-foot shoulder on each end would be enough for them to access it. So this is a private road.
Is the shoulder shown on the plan?
Yes, on a typical,
Okay,
Now we're up to 16 feet.
well, as the applicants pointed out, this was approved without comment, apparently,
Well, this is the
last fall.
fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth amendment, so.
But the only amendment that they're with us tonight for is the reconfiguration of the lots.
The lots.
Exactly.
Correct.
So, and it is an improvement over the old dirt driveway.
well, right, so you're talking.
I would only point out to you that the city council's in the process of dealing with 100 private roads now that are gonna be public roads at some point along the way. And with all due respect, 20 years from now, somebody can come in and say, let's make this a public road.
Even as a driveway?
Yes,
They'll
but it-
have to bring it up to standards.
that's right,
I
then they'll have to,
agree,
then
but-
they'll have to bring it up to standards, that's exactly the
I
point.
agree, but I just, if the standard applies then, why doesn't it apply now? I'm all set, you guys. go
I'm
ahead.
I'm not trying to cut debate on this, why don't we get a motion and a second, and then we can discuss it, further at that point, if there's further discussion necessary. The motion would be to approve the, amendment that's before us tonight, in that the only change really is the configuration of the lots.
This is not what we're talking
Or findings similar to that.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion
Yeah.
by Mr. St. Clair.
Second.
Is there a second?
Right.
We have a motion
They're
and a
fine with
second.
that.
Any
They're making
further
a motion now.
discussion? Yes, Charlie?
So, I understand what Councilor Cheney is saying. I guess the kicker for me is that the fire department, we have in writing, no doubt, has approved this, the driveway at that width. You know, it's a tough one for me to just say, well, they don't know what they're talking about, and it's just a point.
What about if a plan note were to indicate that the shoulders have to be maintained so that there's a spot for for snowbanks in the winter or something like that? We're not asking you to change anything, but you could put a note on the plan that says 12-foot roadway with 3-foot shoulders or something like that.
2 foot right now.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman,
Amy?
may I know I'm new, so please bear with me.
No, that's all right.
But I'm just curious on this one, at some point, did you change from the 18 feet to the 12? Was that ever brought to, and made motion
Yes.
of It was clear that it was going to be changed to a 12-foot?
Yeah, I think the most recent one was November, when we
But was
came
it-
in.
Was it
Yeah.
brought to the board saying, we're changing this to 12 feet?
The only difference, as I understand, yes, it was, and then, but at that time, there wasn't the same number of lots. They're adding a lot now.
Yeah.
Can I just call out, since I'm standing
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
here in front of it?
Okay.
The typical cross-section from the road shows a 12-foot travel way.
12 foot.
Then it shows 6 feet with 2 different slopes for shoulder on each side. So that's an additional 12 feet. That's gravelled. And then it shows a 3-foot swale going down. So really, the total from the edge of gravel to the other edge of gravel is gonna be 24 feet. And then you have 3 feet of earth swale on both sides.
Is that true, Peter?
Actually, it's 2 feet of shoulder, that's the shoulder break. So then it can break down at,
Right, but it's-
on a
but-
slope that you probably wouldn't drive on.
But
So
it's showing 6 feet.
down
of
to the
gravel,
ditch line.
Down to the ditch line on each side. So that's 24 feet
I like
that you
as
have
well.
before you hit the ditch.
That's in summer conditions, until you hit winter conditions like we have now. And if you get a heavy winter and they can't push that bank back far enough, now that road's narrowed up to pavement
but-
width or less.
But this is gonna be like your driveway, and if you can't get both cars in it, you're gonna have to have someone push it out so you can get both cars in there. It's a private road, it's a driveway.
Well, that's why I suggested that, rather than modify the plan, since that cross-section right there pretty much illustrates what we're talking about, to make a note saying that the entire 24-foot right-of-way has to be maintained so that there is a place to put snow in the winter. And for additional access in the summer. That wouldn't be onerous, would it? I mean, it just means keeping the vegetation cut back.
Well, we're talking about 12 and 2 and 2. So we're talking about 16 feet before you go off. So we're not gonna maintain beyond that cut, really. If you wanna put a note on there that says we'll push the snow out beyond the 2-foot shoulder so we can maintain a 16 feet from snowbank to snowbank, I guess we could do that, but,
That would be cool. It's a note.
Hmm.
Not a plan change. It's not gonna cost the applicant a
Hello.
lot more money. Rob?
I had another question on the staff report. We're not charging an impact fee because the original development wasn't, and it didn't get charged impact fees. As that's our standard now, is charging impact fees. Would we not want to charge them an impact fee?
Amending it, an amendment.
It's
not
just
a-
an amendment and the use isn't changing.
But they're adding an additional lot.
actually, we're approved at 15, we're down to 13.
That's why it's not a re-subdivision, because it's not over the 15 original. Originally, it was
So
approved at 15.
it's not a subdivision
It's
coming
not
here
a
now?
re-subdivision.
Then what is it?
It's an amendment
Amendment for what?
to their cluster subdivision,
To add a lot?
to add back a lot that was already there originally.
To subdivide an existing lot.
Was approved at 15, went to 12, and now it'll be 13, correct?
Yes.
So it was approved at 15, Rob.
All right.
May I just say one thing,
Sure.
Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
Just a bit of a conundrum here, I guess. I understand some of the concerns that have been raised about the public safety, accessed by fire equipment, et cetera. But, you know, this application was previously approved without concerns about the width of the roadway at that time. Why, I don't recall. It seems that what we're looking at and looked at then is a total of 16 feet, if I'm not mistaken. 12 feet of right-of-way. and
12
2
feet of pavement, 2
12
feet of shoulders on
2 feet
each
of
side.
shoulder on either side, so really it's a total of 16 feet. So, I think, you know, as long as that shoulder area is kept clear, you'll have a full 16 feet of right-of-way there. That would seem to be reasonable. Now, whether or not the board wants to make that, document that as part of the application, that would be, I think, reasonable.
Well, maybe another
the
way of
board's
wording the note then would be that the applicant must ensure that the 12-foot roadway is not obstructed by snowbanks or other debris. So however you wish to do that, if you're gonna bring in heavy loaders and move snow out, if we get 2 or 3 big storms in a row, you're gonna have a 10-foot roadway in no time. Councilman Cheney's concerns for public safety are well taken. 12 foot's about the minimum. That 12 foot is the amount that the fire department approved or agreed to. So, perhaps the maker of the motion would include some language about, the board determines that the 12-foot pavement has to remain unobstructed, year-round.
Is that an amendment?
That would be an amendment to the motion that's pending, yeah.
So you wish to add that? Certainly don't want me to.
Wait a minute, did you say the 12 feet or you talking about
The
addition?
12 foot, they're saying, well, we want a 12-foot width paved road area, right? Pavement, right?
Yes.
Okay. And our point is, okay, they don't like the note about how many feet on the sides that they have to keep clear. So we just changed the note to say they must keep the 12-foot clear at all times regardless of snow conditions or other, or vegetation or whatever else. I mean, they could have all kinds of problems.
And nobody's gonna remember this note.
It'll be on the plan.
Yeah, I understand. Who's gonna look at the plan?
I don't know.
No, I understand.
You're getting into an issue of enforcement, which we could spend the rest of the night talking about.
Yes, we could, and I don't wanna do that.
No, the time will come for that, though. Yes, Stacy?
Pierre, these are just generalized notes, right? Because I noticed it said that there would be a guardrail installed, but that's
Right.
just generic?
Right.
You're not putting in a guardrail?
No.
Okay.
We call for guardrails generally under certain circumstances, if there's a 3-to-1 slope that drops off 10 feet or something like that. But in this case, there isn't any of that grading issue, so it's pretty flat across the site.
If I recall.
Doesn't warrant,
That well drained as well.
yes.
Okay. So we have a motion amended, and is that amendment agreeable to the second?
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? So, as I understand it, it is the motion as originally made to approve with a note added to the plan indicating that the 12-foot paved roadway must be maintained at all times, all year round. And that leaves it up to them as to how they're gonna do that. Any further discussion? Sensing none. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Opposed? Looks like 2 opposed. So, it's been approved. Thank you once again, Peter, for your.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Okay, so we have some old business to cover. Are the applicants here that are set for conceptual review tonight? Bay Street and the Bank of New Hampshire? They're both here. Would the board have any objection to the chair moving the conceptual presentations up so that we can do the other more mundane business afterwards and let these good people get home? Okay, so I'm not gonna make you draw for it, because we already have you in order, so the first one up would be item 15.1 on the agenda, 1719 Bay Street. Conceptual review, develop 12 units below market value. This was tabled from the January 10th meeting. It's only a conceptual approval, the first step in the performance zoning process. And we'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Carmen Lorenz, and I'm the Executive Director at Lakes Region Community Developers. Can you hear us okay? There we go.
Yep.
I know I'm pinch hitting for Sal Stephen Hubbard, who was here with you last month. She's our Director of Real Estate Development. She's on a tropical vacation right now, so try not to hold that against her. But she let me know that you all were interested in hearing some details about how the property would operate. So we're going to talk about that tonight, as well as share with you the new conceptual plan. Based on the feedback that you gave us last month, we went back to the drawing board and made some significant changes. So we look forward to sharing that with you. And before we get into that, I did also just want to take a minute, if I could, in case folks aren't familiar with our organization, Lakes Region Community Developers. We used to be known as Laconia Area Community Land Trust, and we've been around for 30 years. We're a nonprofit developer of affordable housing. We have a long history in Laconia of revitalizing blighted properties. So there's a couple on the slide that you can see just across the River's Edge. That was the FW Webb industrial site, and then across the street, also on Union Ave, the old Vernatron factory in 2004. That's now Millview Apartments. So it's just a couple examples of our work and what we do. And we've been around for 30 years. When we first started, the concern was for the quality of the housing that was available to low and moderate income people in the city of Laconia. We've since grown beyond Laconia. We've now got a portfolio of 367 apartments. We have properties in Guilford, Meredith, Tilton, Ashland, and Wolfboro, in addition to here in Laconia. So we've grown quite a bit, and today a lot has changed since the 90s when we were more focused on improving the quality of housing. Now the issue is really supply. We do not have enough housing for the population that we have, especially for people of low income. I'm sure people have heard a lot about this issue because it's in the news a lot. The state of New Hampshire is very focused on trying to create additional units of housing, particularly for people of very low income. And that's really what this project is all about. Back in September, I was at the Lakes Region Planning Commission meeting where they put out some draft analysis because they're doing a housing needs assessment for the Lakes region. So they had done a rental gap analysis where they were looking at different income brackets and the number of people or households in those income brackets and comparing the supply of housing that's affordable to those people to how many households there are. And so they provided a list of every town in the Lakes region, and Laconia specifically had a gap of 584 units for people under 30% of the median income. So that's the lowest income bracket. So this Bay Street project is really designed to provide a housing option for that segment of the market that's essentially been priced out. There are not housing options for individuals that are in that income bracket. And I was thinking about this because we are part of this neighborhood. Our office is at the corner of Court and Bay Street. And, I know that you've gotten some comments from the neighbors. Our office, there's one other building in between our office and 1719 Bay Street. So I just, I did want to acknowledge that we understand where people are coming from. There's a lot of fear and frustration coming from the homelessness crisis that we're dealing with as a community, and it's real and it's very difficult. But I think the way I look at it, because I've come to work and I've found, someone sleeping in our HVAC enclosure, and experienced a lot of the same things that others in the neighborhood have experienced and are concerned about. But because of the work that I do, I understand that one solution in terms of turning the tide in this crisis is to build housing units for individuals of extremely low income who've been priced out of the market, so that we can prevent more people from becoming homeless. I don't know, well, I know some of you have participated in the mayor's homelessness task force, but the forums that they did in the fall, I think one of the big takeaways I hope people brought with them was that individuals become homeless because there's no housing that they can afford. Most people don't become homeless because of mental illness or substance use disorder. Those are things that they develop after becoming homeless. So our, mission is to build affordable housing, and our objective here is to provide a housing option to prevent people from becoming unsheltered homeless. So that's really the key point, and what we're trying to do. So we'll go ahead and we can get into, let me see if I can, there we go. So we partnered with Lakes Region Mental Health Center, and Celine Godbout's here with me tonight. She's the Director of Residential Services for Lakes Region Mental Health Center. And we partnered with them precisely because they already work with thousands of people in the area, and they already know which of them struggle with housing. So it's an easy way to market the units and an effective way to market the units to the right individuals. So I'll let Celine talk a little bit about Lakes Region Mental Health Center to give folks a familiarity.
Oh, I know, it's
There we go.
like, oh, okay, perfect.
See now, there you go. That's
Better?
our old eyes, yes. Thank you.
Hi. So Lakes Region Mental Health Center was founded in 1966. We serve Belknap County and Lower Grafton County. We, in fiscal year 2021, we, with our 200 employees, served just under 4,000 children, adults, older adults, and families. Our core programs include counseling, mental health services for kiddos and adults, psychiatric emergency services, addiction treatment and recovery, residential employment programs for adults, neurocognitive services for older adults, and community wellness education.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So first off, I did want to address specifics about how the property would operate. It would be part of our portfolio, so we would be the landlord, just like we are with all of our other properties in Laconia. We use Hodges Companies as our third-party property manager, so they manage all of the properties that we own. And I just want to make sure that one point is really clear, that this is an apartment building. It is not, it's not a mental hospital. It is not a facility for people that require daily psychiatric intervention or care. It's an apartment building for people that are perfectly capable of living independently. They may benefit from some supports, and those supports for the people who need them would be provided by Lakes Region Mental Health Center. So I just want to make that very clear, because I think there's some confusion about what this is. It's not a dumping ground for people who are unsheltered homeless. It is an apartment building for people who qualify based on their income. So
Did I see on the previous slide that the income cap was 18,000?
yeah, so I'll walk through this for you. The way that it works, so first, let's say we get an application. This is what the property manager does. They look and they verify, is this a single person household? Because that's the occupancy standard for the property. These are studio efficiency apartments, one person per unit. Then they look at their income. The maximum income you could have as a single person household would be $18,200. That's the 30% area median income. And that's the income level. So like if you were of that income looking for an apartment, what you could afford would basically be $450 rent a month. There's no apartments for $450 per month rent, doesn't exist. But this property would have rental subsidy that comes with the units. So that's what would make it affordable for those individuals. So they look at the income, their gross annual income. Then they look at the person's current housing situation. So if the individual is homeless or at risk of homelessness, that would move them to the top of the list. So let's say we got 20 applications and we had 5 from individuals that were homeless or at risk of homelessness, they would get priority placement over other people. Now, when I say homeless or at risk of homelessness, those are technical terms that we use in our industry. That can include, homeless can include someone who's staying with a family or friend, someone who is in a shelter, someone who might be sleeping in their vehicle, or it could include someone who is unsheltered homeless, which is what a lot of people, when they say homeless, that's what they're referring to, but it's a wider definition than that. And then someone who's at risk of homelessness, that simply means that they're living in a situation that is unaffordable to them. So if they're spending more than half of their monthly income on their rent, they are considered at risk of homelessness because they can't afford it. So they could get evicted at any time because they're not able to pay their rent.
Right.
So it's a pretty wide net that can be cast, and we're not just talking about unsheltered homeless individuals. There's a lot of other people that would qualify, so I want to clarify that. So then next, the property manager would check to make sure the person is a U.S. citizen or a lawful resident. And then we do criminal background checks. So we run the state of New Hampshire, go to the state police and pull the background check. And we're looking to screen out people who have a history of violent crime or property destruction, basically a history that would indicate that they're not going to be successful as a tenant. They're not going to be able, they might infringe on their neighbor's right to peaceful enjoyment of either their apartment or other neighbors in the neighborhood. So those folks get screened out. So any kind of crime that's a hate crime, arson, sex offenders, or then the property manager can also just look at the criminal background in totality and say, I don't think this person's going to be a good fit because they've had X, Y, and Z in their background. So if they pass the criminal background check, then they look, is the person a college student? Because that's not allowed just because this is federal funding and they don't allow it to subsidize college students unless the individual is a veteran. And then if they make it through all those screens, then the individual would be screened by Lakes Region Mental Health to ensure that they don't have needs that are higher than what could be met at this property. Because again, this is not a place for people who need daily psychiatric care. This is for individuals who can live independently, but would do better if they had like a case manager to check in with on a regular basis to help them with a variety of things.
Good.
So every tenant, just like all of our other apartments, would have their own individual lease that would be enforced by property management. They would have to comply with all the regular terms of the lease. They have to follow all the same rules in our resident handbook as everybody else. And we do exterior property, like drive-by property checks on all of our properties in Laconia twice a week. We go into every single unit twice a year and do an interior inspection, and then we typically will have a third inspection by one of the funders. They'll want to go in and take a look as well. So there's a lot of hands-on. It's not like there's nobody kind of checking. And our office is literally one building away. So, I'm there every day. There'll be a lot of eyes on the property is what I'm trying to say.
The lease that contains, it says, rules for behavior. Am I correct that drug use, drug sales, anything to have to do with that would be prohibited under the terms of the lease?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That would be, if somebody gets caught, then that would be a
Grounds for
Violation.
eviction, yeah.
eviction.
That's
offense.
a major lease violation.
And moving other tenants in,
Yes.
anything like that?
Right. That would be a violation also.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, unauthorized live-in is what that's called, so they can't have anybody staying with them.
And if somebody moves in and their mental health state or their physical health state deteriorates to the point that they can no longer live independently, then they'd have to leave, wouldn't they?
Correct.
We would support them in that.
All right.
Yeah, and I'll let Celine talk about the support services that will be available. Oh, go ahead.
If I could just follow up, what would the typical length of a lease be?
So our leases run, so when somebody first moves in, They have a 12-month lease, and then after that, they go month to month. That's how we do all of our other properties. All right, you want to talk about sports?
Sure. So there would be residential staff on site Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. We would do a move-in orientation for all new tenants, going over the lease, making sure they understand. If they have a guardian, we have them there. Any family members that are involved, we would go over it with all of them. They would be assigned to a case manager. And we would provide services such as benefits. If they don't have an income, we would help them obtain an income, whether that be working or applying for, some sort of.
Ability.
Yep. We would support them in independent living. So our case managers see our folks once a week, sometimes more if needed. So we go into their units and we make sure that their trash is taken out and they have food and they know how to prepare their meals, things like that. Financial management, so making sure they're paying their rent and their utilities are turned on and all those things. Healthcare management, so they see a provider, a PCP, one of our providers. Health and wellness, we have in-shape services that go in and help them exercise or go grocery shopping to buy nutritious meals. We have mental health services, that's like medication management. We have individual therapy, we have group therapy. We have a thing called IMR, which is illness management and recovery. Employment services, like I said, we have our supported employment program. Conflict resolution, so we're, if they're like, oh, my neighbor is being annoying, we go in there and we're like, all right, well, what can we do to help you and how can we help you cope with that and talk to the neighbor, things like that. Crisis intervention, we have a mobile crisis team. We are also, during the day, crisis clinicians, so we're going out all over the place to help. So those are our main services, I'd say.
Yeah, and I know there's been some questions, so, well, what if somebody was having a crisis, what would we do? Well, we call the mobile crisis team, and then they come and intervene. So it's, for us as the landlord, there's like a huge degree of comfort in working with an organization like Lake Sturgeon Mental Health, who's been around for forever, and they can provide supports and help people be successful. Whereas we're already housing a number of individuals that fit these characteristics. They might have a housing choice voucher, and so that's how they're able to qualify for some of our other units. But they're not benefiting from some of these supports where they would actually be much more successful if they were. So it's very attractive to us as a landlord to partner with an organization like Lake Sturgeon Mental Health to make sure that folks, have a good shot at being successful. So I know you're all familiar with the property. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
This is
Sorry.
like the most important part.
Okay, so.
Well, we wanted to share some examples of the type of clients that would qualify for this building.
Yes. So some examples might be a 22-year-old young man diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and a panic disorder. This young man works part-time as a customer service staff at a local chain store. He struggles to maintain housing as he isn't able to afford market rate rent and doesn't have family that will let him stay with him, are available to let him stay there. This client would be an excellent candidate for this housing project. A 34-year-old woman diagnosed with PTSD, depression, and anxiety as a result of being a victim of domestic violence. She works part-time at a local restaurant and would apply for this housing project as a way to set out a new start in her life. A 58-year-old male diagnosed with bipolar I disorder who receives Social Security disability income and cannot afford market rate rental rates would be a good candidate for this housing project. A 33-year-old male diagnosed with depression due to a significant car accident, leaving him with a physical disability and inability to continue working full-time, as well as pay market rate rental rates, which resulted in him experiencing homelessness. This is another excellent referral from LRMHC to this housing project.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And veterans, of course, would be eligible for VA benefits as well.
Yep.
Okay.
So we just wanted to give you some examples of actual clients that would qualify. We're not so worried about criminal background and things like that. These are just individuals that happen to work with Lake Sturgeon Mental Health and can't afford the market rent because really of their income.
Okay.
So I know you're all familiar with the existing conditions at the site. I think this week is the 1-year anniversary of the fire. So we did submit to you a revised concept plan. Sal and I talked after the last month's meeting, and we agreed 100% with all of your comments and your thoughts. It was too dense, there wasn't enough parking, so we've addressed that. This is just elevation drawing of the style of the exterior so that we're trying to make it fit into the neighborhood. So it would look very similar to some of the other homes on the street. And then this is the new, like, site and the first floor layout. So you can see what our architect did was he went and he moved the driveway and the parking. So now all the parking is at the back of the lot. He was able to make the building slightly bigger. So he added about 900 square feet total. And what we were able to do there was add these really nice porches that you saw in the elevation drawing.
Yeah.
And then add an office. So Lakes Region Mental Health would actually just have one of their staff. That would be their office. That's where they would work Monday through Friday. And then we've also included a laundry room on the first floor. One of the units would be fully handicap accessible on the first floor. And then moving on to the second floor, you can see we added like a nice sitting area. So because the units are relatively small, so this would be a nice alternative for people if they wanted to just hang out and socialize. And then there's a mechanical closet on the second floor there. And then the typical unit plan, so you can see that. Again, these are meant to be efficiency or studio apartments, so they're very small, 288 square feet on average. Every unit has its own kitchen and its own bathroom. These are, fully contained residential apartments, so it's not a boarding house. There's no shared facilities other than the laundry room. And I already mentioned occupancy is 1 person per unit. They all have their own lease. And again, from our perspective, we treat everybody the same as we treat all of our other tenants. So they have to follow all the same rules, or they're subject to eviction if they're not able to be successful. I think that's the end. Are there any other questions about the new concept?
Any questions?
I do. I was wondering, you mentioned that Laconia has a 30% gap in affordable housing. Could you tell us what the gap is in Guilford and Belmont and Meredith and maybe Sanborn?
Sure. So overall, and this is the draft rental gap analysis. I believe the final version of the study is supposed to come out next month sometime, so I can make sure you all have that when it comes out. So overall, for the whole region, the gap for the 0 to 30% of area median income is 1,711 units that we don't have based on the demographics that we do have. And then, like Belmont said, they were missing 66. So this is based on the people who actually live in that municipality. And this was from the 2020 census. So obviously it's probably changed since then. Guilford had a gap of 16. Meredith had a gap of 153. Samberton had a gap of 74. Tilton, 95. Let's see, Ashland, 90. Plymouth, 186.
And what was Laconia again?
584. And again, I think that is because of the existing income distribution of the population in the city of Laconia based on the 2020 census,
And you're
compared to
saying
the housing that you
the
have.
targeted population is people who earn 30% or less of the median income for the
Correct.
county, or for the community.
For Belknap County, that's correct.
All right,
Yeah.
so the median income is how much then?
Well, median is somewhere in the upper 60s. But this is, again, we look at household size. So when I say for a single household, that $18,200 a year. So for Belknap County, HUD median family income is like $95,000. But if you look Based on the household size, it's like they can calculate it differently based on the size of your
Right.
family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a question?
Yes, Scott?
You have a wheelchair accessible unit, I imagine it would be wheelchair.
On the first floor, yes.
So I know this is just a conceptual drawing. Do you envision some kind of a ramp, wheelchair ramp,
Yes.
I don't know, on the front porch, I guess,
Mhm.
would be the likely location?
Yep.
Would that seem possible?
Yes. Yeah, we intend for one of those units to be fully handicap accessible, so that would
Okay,
include.
so you would need some
entry.
sort of a ramp to access the
Yeah.
building.
This building will be a secure facility, so the exterior doors will be locked?
Yes.
Tenants will have their own key or
Yes.
key card? Okay.
Yep. Yep, and we typically do security camera systems as well.
Okay.
I have a question for planning that might have been asked last week, I'm not sure. Because of the nature of this, does the normal apartment 1.5 parking spaces per unit not apply?
That's why they're doing performance zoning, because it does apply. So this is part of a oh yeah, you weren't here last month. Part of a performance zoning that they're gonna be submitting when they submit their actual real application.
And this is the first step in the
Yeah.
performance
Right.
zoning process. It's merely a conceptual presentation for our benefit, and then
So then you can have what you had last month.
we'd come back and there would be a public hearing, right? Yes, Charlie?
This is probably, maybe be way off topic, but I've had a few
No.
residents reach out to me. They were concerned, and so this is something you may have already checked at all your other properties and stuff. If not, I hope you do. They were concerned that by having a building like this in their neighborhood, it was gonna depress the value of their property. Have you ever done a survey of all your many locations to be able to say that that has not happened or that it has happened? I mean, I can't see it happening, but again, I don't really pay attention to that stuff.
We haven't done that kind of study. I mean, I think I can just point to, River's Edge and some of the other things that we've done, and I certainly don't see that as being the case. If anything, it's been the reverse. It's actually made the neighborhood a lot nicer.
I agree, but is that something that you could, I mean, I wouldn't think it'd be too hard to check with it, or just check with the,
Yeah, no, it would take a lot of time because we'd have to go through the tax card and look at the values over a period of, like, what period of time are we talking? And, so it would be quite a lot of work to go through and look at our properties and then all the properties around it and
oh no, just call the city assessors up or somebody, say, can you check?
give them
this
a
out?"
project. Here's all these addresses, tell me.
Because but I would think they could, because if taxes have gone down, that's less revenue for
Right.
the city. So maybe that's something that they could check, or a town could check and just, give you a quick answer, yes or no. I would think that they would be paying attention to that.
You'd also have to bounce it off the market trend for real estate values.
That may well be, but nonetheless, even a quick, because there are some, people out there that are kind of talking about this, and this might be a way to say yes or no on that.
Amy?
So I was the one that brought up the parking last time, so I appreciate the fact that you tried to add to it. I'm assuming because you didn't give us one per unit, there's not a possibility to get more parking in there?
Correct. He fit as many as he could into the site. And again, we have a very high degree of confidence that these individuals, they're not all going to have vehicles. I mean, if you're making, or if your income is $18,000 a year or less, it would be pretty difficult for you to purchase a car. We experience that with our tenants that, that don't live in this kind of housing, that it's just very difficult. And so that's why we're not as concerned. I can understand your concern because.
So, let's take River's Edge since you brought it up. Do you have enough parking space?
Yeah, we've
every-
never had any issues at River's Edge.
But you have enough space for everyone to park?
Yes.
Everyone has a spot?
Yes.
So is this your only facility that you would have on the docket that doesn't have enough parking?
Well, so River's Edge, I believe there are 32 spaces total, which is not what's required under zoning. We were given a waiver or something like
How
that.
many units do you have in there?
32, yeah, so there's one.
I think that's okay, you
Yeah.
know, giving a waiver for one per. I still have issues with half.
Right, especially since one of the categories of people that would qualify, you said might be people that are living in their car. So they would be bringing a car with, and if you have 12 and you only have 6 spots, then, and I don't think, trying to look at the aerial of that area, is there street side parking there? No. No,
Not in
there's
the winter, no.
because there's the median kind of thing and then the sidewalk, so.
I'm just
I-
not comfortable with the 6. I am 100%. If you'd done 12, you know, giving me one per, and I understand that your clientele is not all going to have, they're not all possibly going to have a car, but it could be that they all do have a car, because you might choose the people that are, I don't know how it's going to be. I personally have an issue with the lack of parking.
I think the way I look at it, Amy, is this. Not everybody's going to have a car. Nobody, as she said, they're not gonna be able to afford it. And if somebody needs a parking space and there isn't one available, then they won't move in. They won't be allowed to move in. They'll have to find another place
Get rid of the car.
or get
But
rid of the car.
I'm pretty sure when we have given allowances for not enough parking before, one of the things was that within 300 feet, there was a public parking lot available. When we were talking about downtown, the apartments going in on the old school there, it was pointed out that they might not have enough parking there for guests and stuff, but the town owns that public parking lot behind it where they can park.
Those were typical residential
And
units.
I think
I
there-
don't know if this is considered typical.
Would the landlord have the ability to place any parking spaces available to the tenants here on your,
Yeah, I was just gonna
Corner
say, they could park at our office. We have 7 people that work in our office, and usually not all on the same day, and we've got, I think we have 12 spots, so our parking lot is never full at the office, and it would be, I don't know, definitely within 300 feet, I think.
yeah,
So could you make that part of the condition?
Yeah.
Or could we, that any needed parking would be available at their location, their office there? Amy?
Yeah.
That would work? Okay.
It can't be, so my concern is, this isn't something that can just be sold, correct? So you're tired of being landlords, you sell it, and
Well,
now there's
just-
a landlord who only has 6
To
parking spaces.
clarify,
doesn't
though,
have
we're
yours.
not allowed to do that.
Okay.
We'll have a 30-year land use restriction agreement with New Hampshire Housing, which is the funder.
Yep.
And we have to operate it
they can't.
for
So
this
after 30
use.
years, it could go to somebody else, and that landlord now is stuck in having only half the parking.
But the landlord would know that before he
Of
bought the
course,
building.
but still, why would you buy it?
Well,
It's a, you know.
that's
Maybe
kind
you
of
buy
a
just to make it
middle-class
your own house.
bias.
Well, and
I just
also, I
don't-
can say that, so we're not just a landlord, we're a nonprofit organization, we're a mission-driven organization, and in our 30 years, we've never gotten rid of any of our properties. It's not, it would never be our go-to option. So, and most of the land use restriction agreements that we have are 99 years. So this is not, we're not just your typical landlord that might want to sell it at some point. We've never done that before.
Stacy,
My question is probably actually for planning the infrastructure in that area. Would it have to be changed to accommodate that many more individuals?
what do you mean by infrastructure?
the-
Utilities?
The
Sewage and
sewer
water
line
pipes.
going out
Well, that's gonna be looked at when we have the application come in and all the
and
plans
the
are
actual.
done.
Right, this is
Gotcha.
just a
Okay.
conceptual
This is a
plan at this
conceptual
point.
that is, you're looking at the concept, and when the application comes in with all the details and all of the stuff, it's gonna go to every department, and every department's gonna look at what they need to look at.
Gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
So we're doing exactly what the conceptual review is supposed to do. We are in real time making suggestions to the developer as to how to address the concerns
So when it comes in, they have.
when
less
it does
options.
come in.
Make sure there's a fence. And you stipulate what kind of fence, because the abutters, when there's a question about the type of operations that's gonna go on, it always makes them feel better with a fence. Good,
Well, at
good
last-
fences make good neighbors.
Last month, they did talk about, they asked about a fence.
Privacy fence,
They
yes.
did.
I'm just mentioning that.
Thank you.
Question, how would a resident access emergency services that was living here?
911.
You're right.
Is there, there'll be a phone available to them in each room?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet, but we certainly, everyone pretty much has a cell phone, but we could have a phone like right out in the hall or something if that was,
Centralized fire alarm system.
Yeah. but
Yeah,
they would
we
want to
s-
call Lakes Region Mental Health Crisis Line.
Yeah.
But
We
if-
also support folks that need life alerts, those buttons that you wear.
Right.
We help them get those too if they need that.
So my other concern, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, there's somebody there.
Yep.
Say I'm a neighbor,
Mhm.
I see some trouble. Would I have access to a phone number that I could call in the evening or the weekend to get guidance or help or?
I guess it depends on the issue. If it's like a police issue, then that would be a police call. But if it's like a mental health crisis, is that what you're referring to?
That's what I'm wondering, if there was some sort of, if it would be better if the police were not called.
Right.
Yep. We have 24/7 psychiatric emergency clinicians at the hospital.
I don't know as an abutter if you're qualified. 911, let
Right.
them deal with it.
Yeah.
So,
And my last concern, only because I've lived, the front porch. Is there any way that could be moved off to the side? Or in my experience, front porches have become dumping grounds and party places, and it can kill a neighborhood with that many people. I love the look of the side one,
Yeah.
but that front one makes me very nervous, only because I've been in that situation and it was a nightmare. Just because it turned into a hangout for all the friends.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think we can definitely give that feedback to the architect and see what else he can come up with to make it look really nice, but.
Because you've also supplied a sitting area that's indoors,
Correct.
right? And then you've got a side one, and I just wonder if the front one is really needed.
I think the side one will be a lot more like the entryway, but perhaps a back porch, or, I mean, there's a little bit of space next to the parking area that could be a patio or something
Oh,
of that nature.
absolutely, yeah. I was just straight out front with the potential for friends and.
Yeah, but sometimes that keeps people honest. If you move the porch to the back, you can hide and do stuff.
I mean,
What I
can.
don't know.
I know. Again, I would reiterate that we check all of our properties in Laconia twice a week. If we see anything amiss, it's dealt with. So I don't think it would be necessarily become a dumping ground, but I can understand that.
Or like noise complaints
Right.
or
Yeah.
just typical.
Yeah.
The lease probably would state, or could easily state, that the front porch is not to be used for storage, period. You know? I think it looks great. Is that the front porch now, that's the Bay Street side?
Correct,
of the
yeah.
building? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do, the only other property that we have that's kind of like this is the Compass House over at 658 Union Avenue, which used to be our old office. And that's a group home for women in recovery. And we went to great lengths to build this huge wraparound porch, and I don't think anybody ever uses it. But it's like this beautiful porch, and we bought this really nice furniture, and I've never seen anybody out there.
Well,
That
Union Ave.
has a very beautiful interior.
It's on the side and the back, and like, yeah,
Oh.
I know, but
I would just, if I may suggest, in my experience, front porches, much like sidewalks, help support and develop community and neighborliness, and can often be a good thing, because you can see who, you know, if you're walking the neighborhood, like I often do. I walk down Bay Street quite a bit as I walk my dog, and, you know, you see who's living there, you say hello, you kind of, it leads to a little bit more comfort level, I think, you know, it can have that effect as well. I just want to throw that out.
You pick up
And the
that,
parties, and the drinking, and the smoking, and the
Well,
music.
you know,
Yeah, I love that at midnight.
not at midnight, but, you know,
need to
the
join
bigger
in
issue
once
is,
in
you
a
know, turning it into a storage area, it can be a problem, and that could be addressed in the lease, I'm sure.
Okay, so before we get into like color schemes and stuff, is there anything else that we could?
Just out
Yes,
of
Amy.
curiosity, so we all saw the letters from the neighbors, and I know we've all been approached, probably all of us. But I'm just curious what we do about the fact that the citizens aren't real thrilled about it.
Tonight,
The
nothing.
residents themselves.
Tonight, nothing. We'll have a
Okay.
public hearing.
Okay,
We did receive some emails
yes.
in anticipation
That's what I'm
of
referring
this.
to, yeah.
We do understand that there are people that don't want these clients in their backyard, so to speak, but they'll have an opportunity to be heard, and at the time that we are putting the final conditions on it, which makes it a much more effective time for the abutters and neighbors to weigh in. Because that'll be the point at which we will be looking at the conditions of approval. And we may well, in response to public input at the public hearing, make changes, substantial changes, material changes. So,
But
the
not actual
conceptual,
resident
the
changes.
conceptual plan is to let us know in general terms what they're trying to do with the property, and get constructive feedback, which is, I think, what you guys have all done a really good job at tonight. So, Charlie and then,
Thank you.
Stacy.
Thinking about residents' concerns, it might not be a bad idea, along with the tax thing I mentioned. I'm not aware of any, but I don't watch the police report in the paper and all that stuff. But you might be able to get some information from the police department here in Laconia to say, yeah, we've had no problems at all with these residents, or, you know, many calls, or just something to back that up, you know, to show that that's the case, if that's what is the case. It just might be, I'm just trying to answer some of the comments I've heard from people to back up what you're saying.
thank
Sure,
you,
yeah.
Charlie. Stacy?
Absolutely invite the police department to weigh in. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you for all the changes that you
Oh, you're
guys
welcome.
made. This seems to me like night and day, so
Yep, no,
it's
your-
very appreciated.
Your
that-
feedback was great, and the more we thought about it, we said, no, this makes way more sense. And it is financially feasible with just the one building with the 12 units, so we're totally comfortable with it.
Can I ask one last question?
Of course you can.
Does Lakes Region Community Development make payment in lieu of taxes?
No, we pay taxes on all our properties.
Pay taxes on those
Yeah,
properties?
yeah, we pay about 50-something thousand in taxes every year to the city of Laconia.
Thank you.
One more question. In the UC, what is the green space requirement? Or is that something they can ask for from the performance zoning as well? Okay, because it looks like between the pavement and the building, it's taking up over 60%.
Yep.
Less lawn cutting.
Okay, last call. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much. You
Thank
did
you.
a great job.
Appreciate your time.
We look forward to seeing your application. If there's any members of the public that were here for this presentation, their next step is to file a formal application. That's a public record. You can check that out and the plans and everything when they file it. So, and that way, when we have the public hearing, you'll be prepared. You'll be better prepared to know what the details are. All right, so moving right along, we have, I've lost my agenda. Bank of New Hampshire is up next with their conceptual review, their conceptual presentation.
I mean, we threw a lot of stuff out there. Probably should.
Oh,
Kalina.
wait,
Should
before we stop, we do have to have
Have
a
some kind of
motion.
vote or
We
something.
need a motion to approve the conceptual presentation that was made tonight.
So moved.
We have a motion by Charlie. Is there a second? Second by
Can I
Rob?
just take a discussion, discuss,
Sure.
I want to recognize that their attempt to increase parking, but I did want to share my concern with the parking, even though they did address it,
Yep.
just as a food for thought moving forward.
And can I ask, what are we approving with this motion?
Just
Uh,
a conceptual.
Just that, it's basically an acknowledgement that they've made a conceptual plan.
We're accepting the plan. that
And
is-
we're accepting the conceptual presentation.
Okay.
It's not a plan.
Okay.
And it's part of the requirements for what they call performance zoning, so.
Got it. Thank you very much.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed?
Who seconded? Okay.
Okay. Two opposed, the others in favor. All right, thank you very much. So, what's up at 62 Pleasant Street? I like the last plan you guys had. What happened to that?
You want all three easels on one side or split them up?
Yeah.
All right,
Where's the camera?
so we'll scoot some more over.
Oh, yeah, that is quite different. What they were gonna do is build another L, like build an L out.
Right, off the existing building.
Yeah, we can do,
Yeah.
we can do that
I
there.
like this.
A lot of showy space, but not useful space.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Oh, yeah.
Making way too much money if they can afford this.
This will be the drive.
Yeah.
Yep. So that way they won't have a separate building for the drive-through like they have now.
So I can chop all
The temperature.
No clock, no
Yeah,
temperature.
Is that
Oh,
gonna-
yeah, weren't they
is that
gonna put that
Is that
back
gonna
on?
be back?
It's up for debate. We've discussed that. We know it's a hot topic and the final determination by the bank hasn't been made on that.
It's not there already.
I'm aware of that, that's why I'm complaining. I still look for the.
It's parked somewhere next to the Barton sign.
Charlie, just look at your phone next time.
That's distracted driving, thank you.
Yeah, like you don't do that.
I try not to encourage.
Is this gonna have any
Please.
interest on, any impact on interest rates or?
Not sure. Hopefully not. All right, thank you. Good evening, board. My name's David Sherborne. I'm an architect and vice president at OPG Construction. With me tonight is Barry Stowe, who's our civil design manager. We are a design build contractor based out of Belmont, so this is great that a board meeting's only 5 minutes away from home base, so it's a bit like a home game. But thank you for letting us come back and introduce a slightly different concept than what was presented back in December of 2021 and approved. Tonight we're going to review the proposal of a new headquarter building versus a major renovation of the existing building. As part of that, we're requesting relief by conditional use permit to allow an entrance canopy along Pleasant Street as proposed to project into the setback, but stay within the limits of the property, and we can go into a little bit more detail on that later on. But what I'll do is I'll just sort of start with a basic project summary of what we're proposing and how that lays out on the site. So the new building as proposed, the plan is to build it whilst the existing building is in operation. That allows the bank to remain on premises rather than having to move off while the existing building was proposed to be renovated. If we look at the site plan, the new building will be built to the west, closer to the corner of Pleasant and Beacon Streets, while the existing building remains in place. The curb cuts along Beacon Street here and here will remain as they exist today, and we will be eliminating the easternmost curb cut on Pleasant Street, and the one further to the west will move slightly east just to work with the proposed layout once the existing building is removed. There will be 4 drive-up lanes. We've pushed those into the site sufficient enough to allow for the stacking of 5 cars in each lane. There'll be ATM and after-hours drop-off and 3 remote teller lines, similar to what you've seen at most banks or most other Bank of New Hampshire branches as well. Beyond the 4 drive-up lanes, we're also maintaining a fire access lane beyond that, beyond the edge of where the outermost lane and 5 stacked cars are, so there's good circulation throughout the property. Customer parking and primary entrance from the parking lot will be on the eastern edge of the building. As proposed, we're proposing 71 parking spaces. Currently on site at the existing building, there's 66 parking spaces. With the realignment of the drive aisle on Pleasant Street, we're proposing some restriping of the parking out there. Will increase from 15 to 16 parking spaces on the street. And the existing green space on site is 16%, and we're proposing to increase that to 22%. So I think it's a win for the bank with more parking, but also more green space as well. As a comparison to the existing building program, the original building is 3 stories plus a basement, footprint of about 9,500 square feet, overall about 33,000 square feet, and a building height of approximately 39 feet. With regards to the new building, it will be 3 stories but no basement, slightly smaller footprint of 8,700 square feet, and overall we've got a reduction of down to 26,000 square feet. We've been able to maintain a very similar program. It's just the efficiency of building new versus working with an older building that's been added to over the years. It's just get more efficiency. Similar height, we're about 38 and a half feet, so sort of similar mass and height of what exists today, just obviously moving closer to the corner. Within the building, there will be on the first floor at the easternmost side of the building closest to the parking lot will be a 5,000 square foot branch. There will be approximately 54 offices within the building, some 12 office cubicles, conference rooms, boardrooms, cafeteria, and a small roof patio on the 3rd floor for staff to utilize. If you look on both sides, this is a view that we have from Pleasant Street looking west. You can see the material palette is similar to what was in the original major renovation that was approved 2 years ago, but a lot of horizontal granite banding, a lot of brick, and then sort of articulation of soldier coursing of brick, granite head and sills, and so I think it's appropriate given what we've seen in a lot of downtown Laconia as well in terms of that color palette. We've also worked with sort of the articulation of the facade, with sort of stepping it, creating some symmetry, but also raising granite at the entrance, pedestrian entrance off Pleasant Street, and off the parking lot is the main pedestrian access into the branch itself. We've articulated some of the windows just to create some variation. We know it's a big building, but sort of various heights and widths and proportions of windows as we move up through the building over all 3 floors. And any rooftop mechanical equipment will sort of keep in the core center of the roof area, so it's not visible from the perimeter, from the street level itself. So that's a basic description. The one thing that we're asking for relief for the conditional use permit was the entrance canopy. That would be this canopy right here, which would be the pedestrian entrance off Pleasant Street. Note that all of the other roof overhangs at the upper level, and even the lower one in the parking lot, we're compliant with the current regulations for building setbacks. I know we can encroach 2 feet over the setback. Those are all within that delta. So what we're looking for is the slightly deeper projection. We're looking for another 3 feet of relief just to get that, but it would still be within the property line itself. We have another couple of renderings as well that we can share. We can flip the page, this one right here. So this would be, once you're on Beacon Street, Veteran Square's on the left-hand side here, you come around, so this will be the drive-up lane, and this would be sort of the south side of the building. A lot of this is sort of mechanical storage space, back of teller line space, so that's why there's not a lot of windows there, but we're trying to break it up with various masonry there to sort of give it a similar feel to the street-facing sides. And then obviously, once we get to the second and third floor, a similar treatment as well. And then on the other rendering, this would be approaching Veteran Square. So obviously, with the building moving further west, it's more prominent. So the edge of that building is where the current sign is on the corner as well. And that's where I think part of the conversation with the bank and ownership is there's not a need for signage freestanding, because now the building's more prominent. I think it does a great job of sort of engaging Veteran Square and engaging in that, and obviously signage would be a separate permit application as well, and the bank is well aware of desires for the time and temperature to come back at some point. So that's a basic summary.
I look for it every time I drive by.
A community service.
So happy to entertain any questions or comments.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't have my plans with me, unfortunately. Did you have any idea of the potential completion of the whole project? In other words, when the new building would be up and ready to be occupied?
Yeah, so we may be looking at 14 to 16 months of construction period. There will be an overlap, particularly we'll be able to build the new building without the drive-through lane while the existing building is occupied. Then there'll be some overlap as they move in while the existing building comes down and the drive-up lane is installed and all the parking's done. And that may be another 2-month overlap there on the sort of tail end. And I think at that point, if the bank decides to have the branch open, it'd be accessed primarily off the Pleasant Street entrance. In terms of where the easternmost face of the proposed building is, it's pretty tight to where there's basement access stairs on the western side of the existing building, so it's very close. And so this would be a major disturbance when they first move in here.
Thank you.
So what will be the temporary traffic flow while construction is underway?
So we would maintain this aisle through here,
Okay.
because we know that obviously there's the remote teller
Right.
lines there, and then the bank would remain operational, so they would retain most of the parking that exists near the building and on the eastern side.
Would they still be able to exit to the left?
Up here?
Yes.
Yes, they'd be able to exit
So
there.
you wouldn't close that curb cut?
No, I
until-
imagine we'd maintain this
Yeah.
curb cut, the two on Beacon Street and then this one up here on Pleasant Street.
Just for a little while longer. It does say in one way, do not enter traffic.
Has there been any thought about doing solar?
Yes, there is consideration for that, and that's part of the ongoing conversations. I think at the very least, the roof will be made solar ready, where we have to have additional loading on the roof structure, and the bank sort of assessing whether or not that's something they want to pursue now or maybe at a later date.
Can we assume that financing's not gonna be an issue?
I would hope not.
I don't know, they denied me a home equity line of credit. I didn't know, it might be a little tight.
On the third level, you have what's labeled as a cafeteria. I'm gonna take that as more of a lunchroom.
Correct, lunchroom, exactly. That'll be where it's, own prepared
Chairman,
food.
I'd like to make 2 comments. One, I think he misspoke when he said it's quick to get home, listening to his accent.
That home's a little further, yes.
And the second thing I would tell you is, I helped him lug this crap up. If I'd known he was from a bank, I would have required a fee to get this stuff up there.
And then if he'd known it was you, he would have required security. There you go. Thank you.
I think it's very, I think it's great.
We appreciate it.
Ms. Susi?
Bushes or trees?
These would be the trees that exist as they are today. We would retain those. We'd have a more, obviously a comprehensive landscape plan when we come in with a full application. This is all placement now.
It'll consist of perennial shrubs, various shrubs and trees, both decorative and street trees. And then the ones that we're showing here are the ones that are there today, and then, well, these were added, but it'll be a full comprehensive landscape design.
And the rooftop terrace is for employees only?
Correct, or invited guests, I guess.
Yes, no sunbathing.
Oh, invited guests.
Your
I know Logan
proposed
well, I'll get you in
street
there.
parking, you have existing 15 spaces, proposed 60. Those are along Beacon Street.
No, that would be these diagonal on Pleasant Street,
Pleasant
just because of the removal of one
His
curb cut.
diagonal head-in parking
Yeah,
along
that's,
here.
okay.
Everything on Beacon Street would remain as is.
So those are included in your parking plan there, okay, not the ones on Beacon Street.
Correct.
Those are rear
Just
end
as long as they're not back in.
Any gifts when they open up?
Beacon Street West is though.
I know.
These guys are having a hard time being serious right now, so.
Punch-
That's what you get paid the big bucks.
Yeah,
I was
get
gonna
little
say, I
gifts. You
appreciate the
get,
design
you
that you
get
did.
these,
you.
little
I think it
calendars.
matches the downtown and the look that we're trying to go for.
Yeah, no,
I really appreciate that.
no, thank you. Yeah, and we're excited about it. I mean, we're local, so we want to do a good job for the town, and I think it's a big improvement on what they're operating out of right now, so.
I'm also very glad that that exit there on, closest to the bank, where the nose-in parking is, was moved down from that crosswalk.
Oh, right, yes.
People seem to exit there and go,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
left.
And we're also well aware of the cut through here as well, so.
All the bodies right down the street from the Rex there.
Any other pertinent questions for the applicant here?
If I get an invite to the terrace, I'll make a motion.
I don't think you can do that conditionally, but I would yield the floor to you if you wish to make a motion that the board approves of the conceptual design that was submitted tonight.
Oh, yeah, we don't have a number, so I don't even have to do a number.
No, you don't have to do a number. It's the easiest motion you'll ever make, Stacy.
I would like to make a motion to accept the concept of Bank of New Hampshire, 62 Pleasant Street.
Seconded by Mr. St. Clair,
Seconded by everyone.
Representative St. Clair. Anything
Second.
further discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor signify by raising their paw. And opposed, and it carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I know we jumped around a little bit here.
Old business?
Yeah, we're at 12.1. So, here's what I wanted to say. I was hoping that Dean would be here tonight, so I guess at the end of my little spiel here, I'm gonna ask that we table this again another month. In large part because we still don't have any further information about the scope, extent, and focus of the state school property. I'm assuming this will be a performance zoning application or applications, because it's not clear to me whether we're gonna have one developer or multiple developers. There will be conceptual presentations, at which point we can take a hard look at this. But I just wanna point out something. If you look at chapter 674 of the statute, the linchpin, the most important job of the planning board is to have a master plan. And we, not the city council, adopt the master plan. The reason it's the linchpin is that the whole balance of 674 keeps referring back to the master plan. So, for example, performance zoning is what's called an innovative land use control under 674. And it's clear that these innovative land use methods can be adopted, but the planning board is supposed to make its decisions based upon the master plan when it approves these performance zoning projects. I think 5 years ago, when performance zoning was initially presented and I think was approved in short order by the city council, the desire was to make Laconia more attractive to well-heeled developers so that large projects could get off the ground that might go to another community you see, that has less restrictive zoning. And the understanding at the time was that the planning staff would have the ability to make a lot of decisions and do a lot of technical review over and above what was already being done, so that when they came to the planning board, that we would be even more dependent upon the staff report when we go to approve a performance zoning. Notwithstanding that, as you flip through these sections, you'll see that it says that the master plan has to be we have to make reference to the master plan. We're not doing that. In other words, when we make these approvals and now with written findings, right, we're supposed to say, as part of our approval on a performance zoning project, that we believe it furthers the following goals set forth in the master plan. And as you've heard me say, I do not believe, based on my experience as a member of this board and my short stint when a student working for the Lakes Region Planning Commission, that we have a suitable master plan. Certainly not one detailed enough for us to deal with what is, by, you know, any estimate, going to be a flurry of performance zoning proposals that'll be put forth to us. So I want you to think about that and be prepared. I did not throw the moratorium out there as a way to catch the attention of the developer or the governor, although I have to say the chair is appalled at the lack of transparency that has occurred so far in the state's unilateral decision to dump that property on the market and market it that way. Notwithstanding all that, I think we should consider, and I will entertain a motion at the next meeting, certainly when the planner is here to respond, that we put our master plan out to bid to something like the Lakes Region Planning Commission and ask them to come in and give us a more detailed one. Now, the master plan, I believe, it says in here somewhere, at minimum has to have the vision statement and the land use chapter. That's basically all we have right now. But if we're going to do the appropriate job, the job that the council appointed us or named us to do as a planning board, we need to have a better document to work with, and we don't have that right now. I really think we need to take a look. I would urge you to look at what is now considered to be the city's master plan and ask yourself, is this going to guide our decision-making at a time when we're going to be making some very long-ranging, high-stakes decisions, you know, affecting, you know, millions of investment dollars almost every time we sit down? We got to get this right, all right? I don't wish to sit here tonight and malign the planning staff, but I think it's fair to say that we are understaffed for something like this. So far, the director's position has been, we will hire outside consultants to do the things that we cannot do. That puts the cart before the horse. Why don't we get the outside consultant to develop a master plan that's useful so that we can do our job? Because under performance zoning, we've actually taken some approvals and some jurisdiction away from the ZBA. They don't get a lot of these projects that they used to get now. But they didn't give us any additional training. They didn't change the master plan to at the time that performance zoning was adopted. This isn't this is not Chicken Little. I'm not saying the sky is falling. What I'm saying is we need to be prepared, and I don't think we are prepared. And I think we need to take our responsibility, our statutory responsibility, as the body that adopts the master plan, to take a hard look at our master plan and decide whether we need ASAP to get a new one drafted and adopted. And then, and only then, when we have the master plan and we have some facts about what they're actually going to be developing up there, then we can apply the master plan to that development, make informed decisions that are in the best interest of the city as a whole, not just to benefit individual developers, and certainly to take into consideration the concerns of abutters, you know? The performance zoning should not be a substitute for the normal protections for abutting property owners. In other words, we didn't adopt performance zoning so that the developer could be told, it's okay, you don't have to worry about that. It's okay, you don't have to worry about that. You do have to worry about that. And if there are going to be changes or approvals that are not consistent with the existing practices or the ordinance, then we have to make sure that we are making the proper findings on the record that justify our deviation from that. You know? So that's my spiel. I had intended to write something out, but I think that's, again, premature. I just want us pick this chapter up and read it and think it through. It's a comprehensive statutory scheme that is based on the premise that communities, local communities, are in the best position to control growth within their communities. But we need to have the right tools, and I don't think we have the right tools right now, notwithstanding the staffing issue. So, okay, it's up to you. Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things come to my mind right away. I agree with you on the staffing question. And I've told Dean that, and I've told you that before. I'm a little taken aback. Tonight we listened to a proposal from Lakes Region Community Development, and we didn't talk about the master plan, and we didn't talk about the neighbors' input, and et cetera, et cetera. I agree with what you're suggesting. I'm saying it has to be a universal approach. I understand this was only a conceptual thing, but there were many questions asked that I think deserve some thought. The final comment I would make is you've referenced 2 documents, and I think you should ask the staff to provide this board with a copy of both of those items.
What are we talking about?
The statutory statement on but the,
6.
yeah, whatever you're,
You should have all gotten this. Do you have this?
I don't have it. Nope. Bada bing,
No,
bada boom.
I stopped buying them for every board member about 7 years ago because nobody was reading them and they were getting expensive.
Okay.
But you can Google online.
If
on
you
Google,
go to
RSA.
Google and you type in RSA 674, NH 674, it'll come up.
It may come up. I'm not gonna sit in front of the computer all day long and look at it. I'm sorry. Buy me one.
You got any extras?
No, we haven't even got the ones.
How
we
much are
already
they? 'Cause I'll-
So I sent off an
Yeah,
email.
I'll pay for it.
There
And it could
are-
be that the library has one. Do you
There
have a
are
library card?
15 of them coming.
This is the
Mean to call
the
you out.
2018, 2019. So this is the one I got probably when I was appointed.
I'll be happy to pay for one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I actually think
I think we
if
have enough
we are
money.
not buying them, we should be.
Budget
And it's
notes
in the
for
budget,
it.
right?
I think they're $11 a book. I don't think they're
For
very
God,
expensive.
no, that's probably West
book. I don't even
Publishing.
know what
It's
it
probably
is.
120.
Land use law.
It is LexisNexis books. It's not gonna be $20, I assure you.
$20 a month.
Oh, they were wicked expensive.
Are they?
It comes
Yeah.
with the CD in it, I believe.
And then they would try to get you to subscribe
they have
so
a
that
movie?
updates are.
And the other half was the master plan.
Land use.
City being
That's,
built.
that, you can
like
find
The
that on
Sims.
the, it's very
Planning
thin.
board,
I'll-
master plan version.
So,
Pixel game that.
anyone else want
My
paper
bad.
copies?
I was just gonna ask, who wants paper? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6.
Is it that?
Yep.
Let me see if
So
I
no
got any
changes.
extras in here.
Nope. So the master plan and the RSA.
I think
Oh,
that's
that's
the
the-
whole.
Oh, I'll take a copy of that.
Which?
Here, Bruce, this is a whole chapter
I thought you
right
were
there.
taking
I don't
account
want a
for those
book.
orange books. I don't
I don't
want
want a
that.
book.
The master plan.
You can send me the master plan and the.
Who
just
else
that
wanted
one-
a paper copy? Got another copy of 674 right here.
I don't need
I,
it
I
on
think
paper.
we are coming due for a master plan, though, that our last master plan was written in 2018, and that we should be thinking about where we want to go in the future, especially with everything going on now. And I think they have a proposed change to Lakeport there that I saw to have the WOW Trail go down and some redevelopment there. So it might be a great time for us to seriously think about our vision for the city and where we want to go.
So, over the years, the master plan has devolved into separate chapters. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but the last thing that was adopted was the land use chapter in 2018, right?
I believe the vision statement and the land use chapter were adopted.
Okay, and that is the bare minimum for a master plan under the statute, if I'm not mistaken. There are a number of other things that we need to look at.
Mostly an economic chapter with what we're going through right now, and that there was a census just completed. A lot of that information should be readily available.
674-1 is duties of the planning board. If you've not read that, you have to read that right away. 674-2 is the master plan. At a minimum, the master plan has to have a vision section that serves to direct the other sections of the plan and a land use section. That's the bare minimum. It may also include transportation section, community facilities, economic development, natural resources, natural hazards, recreation, utility and public services, a section which identifies cultural, archaeological, and historic resources, a regional concern section.
If I could just butt in to that and add to that, I believe Lakes Region Planning Commission is doing a master plan on bicycle trails within, and that might be something that we as a community want to look at, especially since we're big on the tourism, that would benefit Laconia.
Well, I didn't do it today because I got off track with a few things, but on my list of things this morning to do was to call Jeff and find out if they could and how much it would cost. If they could actually undertake the rewriting of the master plan. It's happened before. And the reason that I know that is because when I was a student in the 80s, I worked for the Lakes Region Planning Commission, first as an unpaid intern and then a paid intern. And I was working on just one chapter of what was then a 10 or 12 chapter master plan about that thick. I had the economic development chapter. And essentially, all that was poring over census data and, what is it, the Bureau, it's the Department of Labor that issues all the economic and business statistics and things like that. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
That was my boring job, but it was very interesting because, see, what happens is, you could get a book 3 times as thick as this and still not know all of it. What the master plan is supposed to do is to break all these duties and obligations and powers down into chunks that the public can understand. The master plan should be accessible to the general public, not just to us, not just to the planning department. And it has to be a document that would withstand the comings and goings of major development projects, the comings and goings of staff, things like that. It has to be survivable. So perhaps at the next meeting, I will do my best to get something put together in writing that you guys can all tear to pieces in an intelligent way at the next meeting. But I do think we have to be open to this, honest to God. We have to. We have to understand that, you know, especially because of the lack of transparency, we don't know what's gonna hit us. We still don't know. And the planning director was privy to information that he was prohibited from sharing with us.
You're talking about one, it's a big project, but I and others have issues on other things that have been going on around the city that, you know, the master plan may or may not have approved of or would approve of. For that matter, because of lack of staff in the planning department, stuff that's been going on. So, you know, this is not just a problem.
It's not just this.
No, it's not just a problem for up there.
How about enforcement?
Well, I'm just talking about some stuff that goes on.
He didn't want enforcement.
Can I ask for one other thing?
Sure.
I read an article in the Daily Sun about short-term lodging. I don't know, what, is that something we want to, is city council concerned with the direction that the city is?
I think the council is, I am. We've hired somebody to track who's advertising short-term rentals, right? I thought Dean told me there was a company that was tracking it for us.
No, the newspaper said that you guys are deciding whether to hire this third party
that's what I
to
heard.
track it
I
or
was
not.
told that had already happened, so I suspect strongly that the council will agree to that, because there is concern. There is concern.
Because I think, point in case, you know, we have a person coming in for a development for certain income levels, and at the same time, we have multifamily units that are being bought up by investors and utilized for short-term, you know, so they're really eating up our housing supply, which is why we have created that
And the
ordinance to begin
the
with.
other question is, how many units are there spread out around, or are they all coming in here?
Those are good questions. Those are
And-
really
And I'm
good questions.
concerned about that, I really am, you know.
I bet you that there aren't, other than substandard housing, that there aren't units in other communities for individuals that make
Right.
$18,000 a year.
Right.
That they could afford to pay rent.
And they're not looking for units in these other towns.
No,
Because they
and-
can't afford them.
And I still call them the land trust, but what they've done for years and years is they're really good at putting together the financing packages through the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. That's their key. And that's why their leases are so long, because they have to abide by all the federal regulations. Honest to God, if the police come to your apartment and you got a HUD-financed home and they find you smoking a joint, you will lose your apartment.
Right.
That's it. There's zero tolerance for
It's
drug
not a
drug
bad-
offenses.
Not a bad thing.
So, Counselor, so should we be adding that to talk about at planning board, or is that something?
I think you ought to at least let the council know your concerns.
But I guess part of the reason why I'm leaning towards LRPC or some other organization like that is that somebody on the outside needs to take a look at not just the needs of the planning department and the needs of the planning board, but the staffing issues and the follow-through. I mean, we spend an awful lot of time, sometimes we spend hours on a particular application and fine-tune it to deal with the concerns of the public, and only to find out years later, or months or years later, that none of the conditions of approval were being complied with. Well, but what I'm
Goes back
saying
to
is that is a structural problem. That's not the fault of this board, that's a structural problem. Because if there is no enforcement, then why are we doing this? Right?
Yep.
So, we can't expect our limited planning staff to be everywhere doing all of these inspections. But maybe, just maybe, if we had better staffing and we had maybe standing contracts with third-party suppliers, to handle parts of the duties of the Office of Planning and Community Development, that would be a solution to the problem, you know? And let's not forget, you know, that personnel changes are gonna continue to occur over the next couple of years. We don't wanna find ourselves as a board in a position where we cannot move forward because of a backlog or because of, you know, a vacancy.
We've got all the solutions sitting right there.
Oh, no, you don't, there's a reason why.
Yeah, we do. You did a brilliant job tonight. Mr. Chairman, if I might, this man owes me a drink. So, yeah,
So does that mean,
Bust it out.
does
Sit
the
around.
counselor suggest that we should,
No.
that we
still stuck
should
on
skip
12,
over the
right?
rest of the?
I thought we had,
We have liaison.
Yes, we have the liaison report, so I'm gonna
The old guys are stepping out.
call an end to this discussion so that, you know,
I'm in on that.
he does not start getting the DTs here. Lakes Region Plan,
It would have
You
been more
want it on for
believable
next
if
month?
he said it's passed.
Do you wanna?
yes, yeah, so we need a motion. Would someone care to make a motion to table this item?
I'll make that
Motion by, the counselor,
Second.
seconded by the representatives. Any discussion? Sensing none, all those in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, is there an LRPC report?
So, there were actually 15 books bought this year, and I just sent off an email asking the latest employee when Laconia can expect them.
We usually get it in the middle of January.
The latest revision.
Of this.
Yes.
You sent an email to LexisNexis?
Linda Waldron is the latest contact for, she seems to know everything. So, the request is out there, where are our books? We paid for them,
We did.
so.
Well, isn't that sweet? All right, Lakes Region Planning Commission.
That was that,
That was that.
yes. Because there are still no meetings until spring.
When you say books, you mean these books?
Those, yes.
Mine died while I was.
Conservation.
Oh, I guess
Amy.
that's me today, sorry.
Hi.
Hi. So the Conservation Commission, invited me and a gentleman named Tyson, I can't remember his last name. He is part of, he basically has grant money, and he is trying to, he's part of the Merrimack River, watershed network, basically. And he's bringing it all the way up to Winnisquam and Opiji. So he's got grant money for getting rid of invasive species along the shorelines, and then replanting through the grant money so that it reestablishes the shoreline.
Indigenous, yeah.
So we are looking at that at the Gale Avenue facility. We're also looking at it at Bartlett Beach. As you come into Bartlett Beach on the right-hand side, there's a lot of invasives there, but we would also put up some small trees, but also some very small bare root type that will hopefully don't weed whack down, and they can grow to,
Blueberries.
no, we don't want blueberries. No, thank you.
How about
Anyway.
Pearly Pond?
Didn't say anything about
Yeah,
pearl.
yeah, see?
All right, thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
City
Thank you.
Council,
Welcome.
other than your
Well,
need
we
for
are
a drink.
concerned about short-term rentals. And I do think some comment from the board would be of statement of interest by this board would be helpful. That if I can repeat that to the council, that this
Yes,
board-
we're interested.
Do we need a motion on that? Cause I'll make.
No, no, I don't.
I don't think we need a motion,
Anybody
but
opposed to me bringing that up?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's needed.
I thought this had all been
Yes, it had, been.
decided.
It had been.
Well,
The question is enforcement now,
Yeah.
because there are people that are circumventing
Skirting
the
the
things that we
rules,
tried to
yeah.
put in place. And now what do we do with those people?
Yeah, they're not trying to, they are.
Yeah, they are, and we're trying to get a third party to pick them up, but it's like, the
And
Pinkertons.
is that a problem in general or only to abutters? That's what I failed to wrap my brain around with this short
most
term
cases,
rental.
Typically
it's a
abutters.
problem for the
Abutters or
abutter
neighborhood.
Because
in the
they
neighborhood,
see what's
yes.
happening.
I got it wrapped up.
'Cause
It's
you're-
abutters, but I think as we've mentioned, it's also taking units out of our housing market.
Yep.
Correct.
Oh, that's
the
true.
concern.
The abutters because they're on vacation and you're not, you know?
Right.
Well, one of the issues that I became aware of is the requirement is you have to live in the facility unless you're grandfathered. And so the machinations that some of these folks are going through to say, well, the guy that owned it before me lived in it, and rented it out on 2 weekends in 1968, and
Well, then that does sound like a city council issue to me.
it is.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's also an enforcement issue.
Right.
You know, let's talk to the neighbors and see if rentals have occurred there. We have places where we've required them to put up fences or whatever.
Does the ordinance, by any chance, stipulate what fines might be imposed
I believe
for
so.
violations?
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay. So the council, as the legislative body, they could impose fines by a simple majority vote.
But you gotta have somebody who deals with the problem. We're back to the staff.
I understand. I absolutely get that.
That's a city council board.
Thank you
tonight.
for
Yep.
enlightening me. Okay, how about the Historic District Commission?
Well, we canceled our meeting again because the city council is waiting for us all to die, I think.
Just you.
Just me. So we're still waiting for the city council to approve or come back with suggestions for the changes we made in the,
There are some significant concerns about the size of the district they propose.
okay, so come back to us with something, and I will only point to what's just happened up on Lakeside Avenue was a reason for concern for some of our historical buildings or older buildings, especially downtown, what we're talking about, that could happen, which has happened up there. So I hope that, you know, I'm waiting for the council to come back and say, we're concerned about the size or whatever, so that we can have that discussion and try to come to some agreement so that we can proceed with this, because
It's a secret.
Yeah.
We don't want you to know.
I
Is this on the
forget,
Governor's
does,
Council?
Yeah.
does the Bank of New Hampshire fall in that overlay?
Does not.
It does not. We went right around that, right?
No,
Because the
the
tr-
overlay right now is just the Veterans Square and the library and that, those.
And those lots going down to, towards
None
the
So
of
school.
what we're trying to add is
Right.
is downtown here. And there were concerns about, for some reason, they had the garage in there and what I call a mall there on Main Street.
So-
Well, and they
so,
went
okay,
over towards,
So what happened is, you guys made your changes
Yeah.
in the ordinance, the current ordinance, not the expansion, the current ordinance.
Right,
And that went to the little subcommittee,
Yeah.
and then they are still looking at it.
right.
we like to refer to that as the speed of government.
But
As
it
I
was
said,
just in
waiting for us
January.
all to die.
There you go.
But it was just
Or
in
waiting
January
for the issue to die in committee?
Well, it ain't gonna
Bada
happen.
bing, bada boom. Or the
There you
committee
go.
did
No,
that.
no,
I'm
no.
just a bill.
Not like that ever happens in the legislature, Charlie.
Yeah.
Turned
Yeah.
50.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
All right.
Just turned 50.
Well, then we're talking about the state school. We can
Does
say-
anybody have any new business?
I would just make one kind of,
Sure.
we're all anxious to go home. I think it was last month, we were invited to attend a,
Training.
training seminar. I know a couple folks were there. I remember Michael, because he was sitting right in front of me, maybe some else. There were some things, it was a very informative session, by the way, and it was great to have the opportunity to attend that. A couple of things that came up that I think can help improve the efficiency of this board, particularly as we look ahead of controversial applications and whatnot. The board certainly has the authority and the right to limit public comments to a certain time limit, and I know we've done that on a couple of occasions, and that can help condense, and request folks, that, if the point's already been made, then don't keep making the same point over again. So, some efficiency things. including, not just limiting the public comments to a time period, but also not allowing folks to speak to things that aren't on the agenda. I think we've encountered a couple situations like that, at least in my brief time on the board, and certainly the board has the ability to not just limit those kind of comments, but not to include them at all.
Could I bounce off that?
Yeah.
I did really appreciate the training session that was put on, so I appreciate the city for putting that on.
Yeah, it was good.
But I did really want to talk about the public input part. I felt like it was, I think city council does it, they have an agenda item for public comment for
Oh, not on the agenda?
Items
On the
not-
items
agenda
on
and
the agenda
not on
or, and I felt like it would have been nice to have a public comment section for us when we have conceptuals. Because sometimes I think that it would be nice to hear that public input.
Yeah, that's a good point.
My
That's for
thought,
items not
I
on
would
the
second
agenda.
that.
Yeah. good
There
idea.
were
Items
folks
not
here
on the
tonight,
agenda.
The concept
there
is
were
on the
folks here
agenda.
tonight that would
I
have,
think they were here to speak, but
But it would have been
Yeah.
nice to have a section where we could have them come up either before or after, you know, to allow people to voice their.
well, and you know that is something that should have been thought out when we adopted performance zoning in the first
Which we have been
place.
talking about the past couple weeks about adding on somewhere, just to let you know.
So you mean
Staff has?
to do what city council does and just have public comments for matters not on the
We
agenda?
also have it on the Historic District Commission stuff too, public comment.
Could we just make it so?
But we'd have to have public
we-
comment on things on the agenda as well,
Yep.
because there's not a public comment option for the conceptual.
Right.
right.
And it's on the agenda, so you can't have it as not on the agenda.
Well, I have no opposition to, I wouldn't have any opposition to us making it formally part of the conceptual review, with the understanding, at least, that there would be, the purpose of the comments would be to inform the developers of what their concerns of the public are gonna be at the public hearing, give them a heads up. You know?
Could I add to
That
that,
would be
that
nice.
we formally limit the amount of time that,
Mhm.
because
And
we
not
don't need somebody there for 45 minutes
Well, and that's
pontificating.
why the other option that has been suggested to me is, they don't do a butter notification until they've actually made an application, right?
Correct.
All right. So the folks that were here tonight must have read about this in the paper or something, or they went online and saw the
Well, it's
agenda.
been on the planning board before.
Well,
Right.
it
So-
was continued, but there also, the next day after the meeting last time, after the Wednesday after our
Right.
meeting, we had someone come in screaming and yelling, doing a piece of paper and saying, you put this in my mailbox, so somebody who lives on that road put the application, their last application and plans in people's mailboxes throughout this street,
Pot stirring,
and so,
yes.
Well,
Not
maybe
the
it would
produce.
benefit us to actually
I
put
bet
on
I
a
know
butter,
who did that too. I could
mail out
guess.
a butter for a conceptual.
Yeah.
So that they have something official from the city to control
well, that's
information.
why it's a conceptual, is because you don't need, the applicant doesn't need to do all that. If you wanna do a design review is completely different. There's a butters, there's everything. You're looking at the design of the plan.
Right.
Conceptual is just a conceptual, nothing in writing.
So, Mr. Chair, the one thing that was at that meeting that you mentioned too is that we have the right to anybody getting up in front of us to ask for their address.
Yes.
So we wanna make sure we
Council
do that.
does that. Name and address are required.
We definitely wanna make sure we do that. So-
We usually
Yes, you do. I'm just.
ask people to identify themselves for the record.
But, and their address.
But I put that in the minutes, cause I find them.
I know that one of the issues that comes up is whether people who are not residents should be able to address a local governmental body.
That question came up during that training.
I have been asked to leave another town's meeting before. I know you might find that shocking. But because I wasn't allowed to speak because I didn't live in the town, and I wasn't representing anybody that was there, but I think more transparency is necessary and is a good thing. You know, I'm still as you know, troubled by the lack of transparency that the state has shown us. Why don't we add that as an agenda item the next time around? Call it for public comment for matters not scheduled for public hearing.
With a time limit, please.
Yeah, in the discretion of the board, because if we're slammed and we've got, 10 hard ones in a row, and they always put the conceptuals at the end, we're not gonna wanna sit, or make the public sit here through the end. That's the other thing. If we're gonna go with public comment at conceptuals, then we probably should move the conceptuals up in the
See,
agenda.
that's the beauty of what the council does. They say items on the agenda
Yeah,
and items not on the agenda, two
Right.
And-
different times.
Not on the
But-
agenda comes first.
Right. So if you're here and you just want to make a quick statement about something that hasn't come up
so
yet.
you do them earlier in the meeting.
Right, and the same thing with
Number 9.
comments of, regarding items on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
That's a little later in the meeting. Anyways, we can talk about it. That's what we,
So what's to keep people from just showing up and making some,
that's where the time limit comes in.
Right.
so they still get their 3 minutes to talk
Listen.
about the end of the world is coming?
Yep.
I do that quite
Well,
often.
you
They
can,
actually
you can
come.
say, you can say they have to be germane to the board.
from no trees.
Germane to the board. So if they want to talk about, the planning department, the Public Works Department, that's not germane to the board. So comments,
So we get a gong or something?
right.
If you're sitting on
You
the
don't
end.
need a gong, you've got me.
Taser.
If you're sitting on the end,
like
you
all
can
of
give it
these
to you, you
ideas.
can reach
Pull the
out.
trapdoor, right?
That's what that tripod's for.
Would the public sit only in those 3 chairs? Thank you very much. All right, anything else?
Move to adjourn.
There's a motion on the
Second.
floor. Is there a second? Any discussion on the motion? Sensing none. All those in favor?
Yeah.